Embassy of Germany in Manila, in the Philippines, provides visas to contractors, those are mercenaries who have decided to join the conflict at the site of Kiev. They are giving them Schengen visas. Who do you think is designated as an employer in those documents? Perhaps it would be a surprise to you for Italians, Spaniards, the French, for the other residents of the European Union, because it's a common space that they are letting those people in. Who do you think is designated as an employer? Private military companies in Berlin. Upon arrival in Germany, the recruits are being sent to Poland and then to Ukraine. What is the guarantee that they will not be redirected elsewhere? There is no guarantee, but the main thing is, and the other point, the Parliamentary Assembly and all other institutions that have multiplied in the European space, European Court of Human Rights, they could discuss the situation. How is that in the Philippines, the Americans are recruiting Philippine residents, and the German consular establishment is providing them with Schengen visas under a false pretext and motive, providing for false data in the documents. All the while, in Ukraine, they are continuing the fight against historical heritage of Soviet and Russian eras. Perhaps this is a testament to the fact that Kiev has little time left, and they are ramping up their efforts to demolish all that is left from the true historical memory of Ukraine, from its history. In the city of Chernovtsi, they have demolished a memory plaque dedicated to Fyodor Poletayev, hero of the Soviet Union and Italy, the member of the Italian movement of resistance. He fought valiantly together with Italian partisans and perished fighting Nazis in 1945. We have repeatedly mentioned him during our briefings, and we will of course provide a link to the relevant materials. In the city of Nikolaev, a memorial plaque was removed dedicated to Vladimir Obraztsov, a Russian Soviet scientist in the area of transport. Is he no longer a source of pride in Ukraine? So I don't understand it. They are retaining the memory of those people whose memory is beneficial to them. Someone is included in the national glory of their country, and those the people that have also been born but are not beneficial to the historical idea of Ukraine are being destroyed, are being erased. In the city of Irpin, in the Kiev region, the memorial of Soviet warriors was also vandalized. They removed the plaque stating "Glory to the heroes who have died for their homeland in the Great Patriotic War 1941-1945. Just think what are the motives of those people that stand behind this. If they were just crazy, perhaps perhaps they wouldn't be legitimized by the European authorities. If they are legitimized, then perhaps their official ideology is sort of accepted. What do we call it when the memorials, when they demolish the memorials to those who have died fighting Nazism and this fascist ideology? What do we call them? What do we call those who want and desire complete destruction, physical and moral destruction of everything linked with the anti-fascist movement? Of course, we can only call them neo-fascists, neo-Nazis. In the village of Maluchki, in the Rovno region, the authorities have demolished the memory plaques memorial plaques at the monument dedicated to the soldiers who have died fighting Nazis. In the village of Krykovshina in the Kiev region, they have demolished a bas-relief of the Order of the Great Patriotic War from the memorial of warrior liberators. In the village of Putsile in the region of Chernovtsi, they have taken off the head of the statue of a soldier in the memorial complex of the fallen Soviet warriors. This is just vandalism against the memorials. On the 19th of November, the City Council of Odessa has adopted a new edition of the rule of territorial community of the city and exempted all mentions of the Russian Empire and the USSR from the text of the document. They've exempted all the mentions of the Russian Empire, the USSR, and the founding empress of the city, the Empress Ekaterina II, and other figures linked with that.
And there has been not a hint on the Russian language as part of a heritage, of the heritage of the South Palmyra. And when they write school books, how will they be presenting that? Who founded Odessa? Maybe Odessa just exists by itself. The city was brought to the shore by the wave, fell from the sky. How will they describe that? The great city with outstanding monuments, architecture monument, with very beautiful streets and lanes, museums, monuments, and shopping centers. It was not connected to the Soviet Union. What will the date of foundation be? Maybe some neo-Banderite historians will work and maybe dig something from Neolithic time. Mykola was here and founded Odessa with such an inscription. So you remember the hymn of the city used to be the song about Odessa from White Acacia operetta sung by Tatiana Shminga, music written by Isaac Dunayevsky, lyrics by Vladimir Mesa and Mikhail Chervinsky. So it was since 2011 the hymn of the city. Now they have chosen the legendary song Near the Black Sea, written in 1951 and translated into the Ukrainian language, written by poet Semyon Kirsanov and composer Modest Tabachnikov for the renowned singer Leonid Utosov. It used to be a very popular song for the city, characteristic of the city. Now it is called Cry Chornovo More in the Ukrainian folk version. So it's just similar to KVN game where the team of Zelensky played when he was young. Maybe they took something from his 95th quarter. When the melodies of old songs, they composed new texts based on those melodies. It's done at KVN and the other TV shows for people to laugh, not to take that seriously. But here it's mocking. Here that's just against the memory of the people who have created its glory. It's just mocking those who for centuries have enshrined the beauty of Odessa, enshrined it for centuries. And it's unlikely that the Ukrainian government will earn the respect of Odessa residents by such methods. It will just facilitate, speed up the end of the Kiev regime. The lists of decolonization and decommunization of the followers of Bandera and Shukhevich, they are quite large, and the work is carried out there. It's just not writing those lists, but to destroy monuments, to destroy them one by one. It's also used as a cover for stealing money. This function is perfectly known in Ukraine. The less the population, the lower its cultural level, the better it is for Kiev authorities, for these usurpators. But eventually, the monuments will be restored, and the Ukrainian people will demand from those usurpators the desecration of the memory of their ancestors' heroes, and mocking the outstanding sons of the past. From the 17th to the 19th of November in Washington, there was a visit by the group of priests of Ukrainian Orthodox churches. They discussed egregious violations of the rights of believers in Ukraine. The initiative was presented by the National Federation of Young Republicans of the United States. They mentioned the 2024 law about cancellation of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and a separate point is developing the guarantees of Kiev against Kiev measures against Christian and against clergy members. A number of Christian communities just supported this initiative, and also the Republican legislator Anna Paulina Luna. This information attracted the attention of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. They were highlighted in an interview by Tucker Carlson with the renowned lawyer Robert Amsterdam. He described in detail what is happening in Ukraine in the religious sphere. In December at the Capitol, they plan to further discuss with legislators and Orthodox Christians from all over America the measures to protect the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. More than 200 Orthodox priests have been prosecuted in Ukraine since 2022. That's just because they are priests. Ukrainian schismatics, radicals and militants continue their cynical raids. On the 11th and 16th of November this year, 2 more Ukrainian Orthodox churches were captured. The Chernobyl Savior in Cherkasy and the Resurrection Cathedral in Moshne village of the Cherkasy region. Now, the order has been published of the head of the Freedom of Conscience Service in Ukraine, Viktor Yelensky, including Kiev Metropolia, Koretsky Trinity Women Patriarchal Monastery of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, whose actions are banned legally. The court hearing will take place on the 11th of December, but they try to put pressure on legal authorities in order to just begin the crackdown on the Kiev Metropolitanate and then the entire Ukrainian Orthodox Church. But why did they call their service the Freedom of Conscience service? Maybe they have just got rid of conscience themselves, have long ago got rid of that. The aforementioned fact confirmed the urgency of the tasks of denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine and the elimination of threats from its territory. All these goals will certainly be achieved, as Russian government officials have repeatedly stated. Now, regarding the situation in Moldova, this Euro integration and NATO rapprochement policy, intimidation of the people, intimidation by the mythical Russian threat. On the 18th of November, the President of the Republic, Maria Zakharova, said that Russia is trying to intimidate the Moldovans by the war and to organize violent actions. But when? Who has said that? Or has been telling that on the territory of the Russian Federation, or from the territory of the Russian Federation, with power, with authorities? Maybe they will just name just one name, one surname, and there has been no proof presented, not a quotation, nothing. And gratitude has been expressed to the EU and NATO for the rearmament of the country and the growth in military spending. Mikhail Popshoy, foreign minister, also confirmed the importance of discussion on the neutrality of Moldova and the readiness to discuss its value for ensuring security. But actually neutrality has no value, actually. Yes, you should just ignore all the history of the 20th century, just to close that door and never look there. And then you can invent any concoctions against that background. So the Moldovan citizens, they are just ready to discuss that, because 70% of the Republic citizens do not support the idea of NATO accession, and 78% support the preservation of neutrality. That's where the Moldovan people are more clever than their authorities. Because contrary to Sandu and Popshoy, who just accuse us without any quotations or links, we just support our statements by concrete quotations, by concrete links. On the 17th of November, the construction of a new ammunition depot was started at the military training ground near the city of Balti in northern Moldova. On the 20th of November, at the customs checkpoint Elbice-Leushene, on the border between Moldova and Romania, munitions were found in a truck, and weapons, lethal weapons. It has been reactive storm grenades, hand grenade launchers, Russian portable missile complexes Igla, and anti-tank missile complexes Coronet, and their parts, it was just cleared as metallic constructions with the destination Israel. The Moldovan army does not use such weapons and munitions, and it's just the Kiev regime participating in illegal weapons turnover, and the country is just a transit base for such military shipments. And it could be a basis for some future provocation in order to just drop the elements of weapons and munitions produced in Russia, and then as Sander likes that to mention, there are no facts now, but from this cargo they could have been invented and then reproduced like on a 3D printer. The militarization of the Republic, together with the aggressive Russophobia, are the main reference points for the current Moldovan authorities. The most tragic thing is this so-called Euro integration project. The regime representatives are just destroying the ties with Russia that have proved its efficiency. Actually, the Republic has received a lot of benefit from the CIS integration. The GDP growth in 2011-2021 period was 40.9%. That's including the pandemic's year. Up to 2% of this growth was assured by the CIS integration processes. And then Chisinau, since February 2022, stopped its participation within the Commonwealth. And there are brave people who are just accusing Russia of alleged problems in the Moldovan economy. The import from Russia decreased by 78.6% since 2021, and export from Moldova to Russia fell by 59.5% and amounted to 3.3% of the total export volume. And since 2022, the Moldovan economy has been in the red and is only kept afloat thanks to EU payments. It's not just payments, it will be credits, loans to be paid by future generations of the Moldovans. I beg your pardon. Those whom Sander has said to call the Romanians, it's not for the benefit of the economy in order to improve, but it's alleged aid that is killing the economy, the industry of Moldova, because it's aggravating the situation. And all those coincidences, I mean, the Moldovan economy within the CIS space, it has flourished, but it has been moving towards development. But after it quitting this CIS space, it has started to degrade. It was the invented cause allegedly to save, and it will just influence the Moldovans themselves who, out of desperation, are leaving Moldova en masse and search for better life, just trying to make the use of their talents where it is possible, because they understand that they do not have the future in their own country, in Moldova. It's really sad to see that the Brussels proxies are turning Moldova, that used to be prosperous, with the developed agriculture and industry, into another colony from where they just can take away what has not been stolen. And to twist people's arms by those loans, by those credits. And now let us see what is happening with the European Union. You just remember that it has been created as an economic bloc. It used to be called the European Economic Union. They sought to improve the well-being of their citizens, to minimize the losses, but now it's being turned into an appendage of NATO, pursuing a confrontational foreign policy.
Under the pretext of a made-up, as once again, of a fictitious Russian threat, the EU authorities recently have been sending unprecedented funds to military purposes. According to European Defense Agency, in 2024, the overall defense expenses of the EU countries have grown by 19% compared to 2023 and have amounted to 343 billion euros. In 2025, they will reach 381 billion euros. However, European economy experiences a protracted stagnation, which doesn't allow for the governments of the EU countries to increase the revenues of national budgets. The share of EU in the world GDP and the buying capacity parity, according to IMF, has decreased from 70% in 2011 to 14% in 2025. This is what happens to those who resort to sanctions, thinking of themselves as world elite. In 2024, the EU GDP has increased only by 1%. In 2025 and 2026, according to the forecast of the European Commission, the picture will not diverge significantly. The economic growth expected at the level of 1.4% in the European zone and 1.4% and industrial manufacturing and production in the EU in 2024 has contracted by 2.4%. They also still challenge a scenario of state finances. The aggregated deficit of state budgets of the EU countries in relation to GDP will grow to 3.3% in 2025, and the maximum allowable level legally established at the EU is 3%. The estimates of state debt in relation to GDP will increase from 82.2% up to a record high of 83.2%, despite the fact that according to EU rules it shouldn't exceed 60%. But they have not criticized this situation. This is not the same as fighting human rights violations in their own space. That's the thing that they don't like and don't appreciate. The thing that they do like is to meddle in others' affairs and to provide another grant to another media piece that will investigate the causes of an economic decline in other countries. It's telling that the largest economies of the EU, Italy, France and Belgium, Spain, have been among the countries with the highest ratio of state debt to GDP, all above 100%. According to EU statistics, 27.5 million of residents of the bloc in 2024 have faced serious material complications. In around 47 million Europeans couldn't afford heating in a significant measure in their houses. The key energy deficient areas of EU industry, the chemical industry, the steel-making industry, car manufacturing experience great difficulties. The EU countries have to overpay 2 or 3-fold for energy and 4 or 5-fold for gas. It is very difficult for them to stay afloat. In this situation, the growth of military expenses is only possible through the decrease in other budget in other budget categories, primarily social ones. Every euro invested in the manufacturing of munitions, missiles, and drones is a euro that has been extracted from education system, from health, from pensions and migration reform. It begs a question: what is the state of those countries? Are they either they are at war, in a hybrid war, or B, they are going into a war, or C, if they are preparing for peace, if they are supporting peace, standing for peace. They have to make this clear. At the same time, the EU and its member countries are actively resorting to state loans to finance these rearmament programs. The current military expenditure is being laid upon the shoulders of future generations, and everyone is silent about that. The children and grandchildren of current EU citizens will be bearing the brunt of this debt, slavery, and this will be especially difficult against the backdrop of demographic tendencies in the European Union, the aging of the population, which will lead for more exertion of pressure against the pension system. Also, they are experiencing the decrease in the working population and low birth rates. But they don't care about that. Through increasing their military expenses, the EU, as they claim, are expecting to revitalize the economy. I will once again remind everyone that officially they are not in a state of war, in a state of any battle or holding any operation. No. Officially, they are at peace and in complete tranquility, and they're calling for everyone to do the same. However, to receive long-term effect and to explain the rationality of this militarization, they are forced to maintain this conflict potential both in the European region and the entire world. It's clear that the cultivation of the mythical Russian threat is of great benefit to the current EU leadership. It distracts the population, the European electorate, from the deep internal social economic problems that they are not keen on resolving, or at least they don't know how to. The main profiteers, main beneficiaries of this militarization are the leading military and industrial establishments of the EU and the US that are clearly linked with the political establishment in these countries. They are gaining huge profits on huge state contracts, ensuring record profits, and all the while all other sectors of the economy are severely lacking in investments. Under the pretext of security concerns, the financing of defense in the EU is non-transparent, which is fraught with high corruption risks. We remember the same story with the anti-COVID vaccines in Europe. That's the thing that is going on with the militarization of the EU. They're sending the very same SMS by Madam Ursula, Madam Kaya, and other members of ruling circles and some members of the political elites that are entrenched themselves, that have entrenched themselves in the power. That is the same way that they are making decisions. They are completely non-transparent for the entire populace. The information space in the West is almost completely sanitized from alternative points of view. As a result, the population of European countries is in a complete informational vacuum or limbo. By 2030, they're expecting to invest more than 1 trillion euros into the defense production, defense manufacturing, volumes comparable to the military programs of the Nazi Germany on the eve of the Second World War. This ramping up of arms race and military psychosis and confrontation logic is undermining the security of the EU countries and increases the dangers of involving them into a full-fledged armed conflict, which will lead to a collapse of Europe. Our experts have prepared a detailed report on the anti-Russian activity of more than 20 countries of the European Union. It will be published in the extended version of the briefing. Please take attention to that. There have been a lot of questions related to the fires in the residential complexes of Hong Kong, which resulted in injuries among Russian citizens. The General Consulate in Hong Kong is actively looking into the matter. There is no information as of now regarding any Russian victims. Our foreign policy establishment is looking closely into this event. We would like to express our sincere condolences to all those afflicted in the district of Taipo. It is our sincere wish that all those afflicted will regain their health as soon as they can. Also, there have been a lot of questions regarding the situation in Guinea-Bissau. Moscow is concerned about the aggravation of internal political situation in the Republic against the backdrop of presidential parliamentary elections. According to information we received, the president of the country was detained on November 26 by a group of members of the military, which have claimed all the executive authority in the countries. They have introduced martial law. We are carefully looking into the situation, and we call on all actors in Guinea-Bissau to express restraint, to maintain law and order. The Embassy of Russia in Guinea-Bissau is taking all necessary measures to ensure security of all the members, of families, of employees, and all employees and compatriots in that country. Now a couple of words on Germany and the history of the Second World War. We have always thought that the places of evidence depicting the crimes of the Nazi regime that have been mentioned in the documents of the Nuremberg Tribunal. I mentioned this previously because the world knows all too well what was the Second World War. Everyone remember that. Remember that with dignity. The tribunal in Nuremberg and we've been regularly addressing the documents, archive documents. We already mentioned in detail about the new information that we have in that regard. The victims of the Hitlerites that have suffered from the Holocaust and other genocides committed against the peoples of the Soviet Union deserve special honoring and memory. The things that happen currently shows that the current authorities are not sincere about their penance. In the North Rhine-Westphalia, there was an auction of the victims of the Holocaust and those who have died due to the actions of the Nazis. This is not explicitly forbidden by law. Initially, hundreds of documents from the collection of the private investigator, researcher of this era. There are documents on the forced sterilization and the yellow star of prisoner of Buchenwald were all listed as items for sale. It's difficult for me to say this. This yellow star was worn out. Also among the items were a Gestapo member card from July 1942. Everything listed. All those traces of wear in the yellow Star of David, all those materials, the facts that have been listed as items for sale, they were listed for a price of 350 euros. It is puzzling. In 2000 years, the price of treason did not inflate, but rather deflate. At the same time, the scope of this treachery was preserved. Also among the items was a letter of an Auschwitz prisoner for 180 euros. I don't know what to call it, extreme cynicism or what, or perhaps something else. I don't know. I can't even tell you. Perhaps there is a term for that, but it hasn't been invented yet. How to describe this in the terminology of humanity, profiteering from the selling of intimate thoughts of people that have been doomed to suffer. Also for sale were the documents belonging to criminals. I understand the collectors, they perhaps amassed these items from different means, and these items could be collected by people that are appreciating historical value. The question is, perhaps it's the lack of legislation in that regard played a cruel joke on this, and the absence of legal settlement, legal framework, perhaps didn't beg the question of actual morality of this. But didn't anyone, neither the collectors nor the auction houses that prepared the auction, didn't they have the idea, at least, that even in case the collectors needed money, perhaps for investment, perhaps for something else, couldn't they just address the museums, the memorials and Foundation of Protection of Memory of Victims of the Second World War, victims of the Holocaust, just like that, in just within normal human communication? Or there is some ultra-liberal new ethics completely clouded their brains, leaving nothing of human behind? Why do they need this delicacy, why do they need this delicate approach? Why do they need all this privacy, confidentiality, humanity that they are parading around? Protection from all types of harassment. Why do they need it? If everything this was invented by humans, it was invented for this. For cases like this, it's a very example where all aforementioned ideas could be at play. I assure you that any museum in Russia, any collector in Russia who is linked to these events, it would only take one letter, one message for our historians, for our collectors, for our museum curators, our heirs, to immediately react in a constructive manner, to do anything for these evidences, for these testaments of great tragedy and great heroism at the same time, evidence of heinous crimes by Nazis and heroism by liberators could receive their deserved place in museum and memorial complexes. Because this is the thing that has been proven by our country time and time again. From the creation of new exhibitions and the revitalization of old ones, to the daily labor of searchers and categorizers who are doing these things on their own in the archives, in the field, in libraries. We've proven time and time again that we honor the historical memory and respect it. No, they just decided to auction it. First, they robbed these items, destroyed everything, and 80 years later, once again, they wanted to profit of the evidence of their own crimes and to profit from human tragedy once again. It was made just a just a good for sale. And just pragmatically thinking, what if someone who wanted to destroy this evidence bought it? What if those items were purchased by someone who wanted to relish in the suffering of the victims of those tragic events? When this information was made public, the official Berlin was quick to display indignation to avoid this damage to its international image, but they were too late. They're represented by people who are proud of the Nazi heritage, including those personalities like Annalena Baerbock. And we say this because we judge them by their deeds.
So that's one more example. And it's not an accident. It's just a regular situation. The same German authorities, German political elites, for many years they have turned a blind eye to an obvious problem. It's not a problem, it's their tragedy. It's not our problem, it's their problem and their tragedy. Non-payment of compensations to the victims of the siege of Leningrad, because they have decided to make those payments only based on national grounds by dividing the victims. It's just not humane to divide the victims to those who can receive compensations and those who cannot do that. Unfortunately, the ideology of the Third Reich has not gone into the past. It's the same thing. It has been confirmed by the previous decisions. For example, the decision not to admit the genocide of the Soviet people. Our grandfathers and fathers liberated Auschwitz. They just won over Nazism in Europe, and it's unacceptable for us. And we call upon everyone who remains loyal to the judgments of the Nuremberg Tribunal to remember about the bloody crimes of Hitler and his satellites, and not to allow the harassment of the memory of the victims. And we just, contrary to this heinous manifestation of the worst atrocities by the German. And nowadays, it's the ideology, the glorification of the memory of the true heroes. And we are doing that together with German people, together with those who have conscience. On the 14th of November in Labos, at the Soviet War Memorial, at the presence of Russian ambassador to Germany, Sergei Nechayev, the remains of Red Army soldiers who died in April 1945 during the Berlin offensive were ceremoniously reburied, and also the forced laborers, forced by Nazis, victims of their crimes, they were reburied. Those remains were found during the search works in Germany. They were discovered, and they were identified because of memorial plaques with the names of the victims, and commemorative ceremonies were attended by local citizens. It's a testimony of German citizens not to consider the Russophobia planted by Baerbock and similar politicians who do not treat it seriously and who are grateful for liberation from brown plague by Soviet soldiers. And we are aware that the The true future of Germany is theirs, the true future of Germany, not those who oriented towards the worst things in the past of this country, but fighting neo-Nazism, fighting fascism. One more important date, 20-year anniversary of the Treaty on Alliance Relations with the Republic of Uzbekistan. One of the basic documents between Russia and Uzbekistan was signed on the 14th of November 2005. It has elevated the interaction between Russia and Uzbekistan to a qualitatively new allied level. The invaluable personal input is made by the heads of the two states. Our relations are based on a solid framework, legal treaty framework. It includes around 350 international treaties and interdepartmental agreements. The Treaty on Interstate Relations, Friendship and Cooperation, the Treaty on Strategic Partnership, the Declaration on Comprehensive Partnership between Russia and Uzbekistan, where the priority the areas of a bilateral partnership are enshrined, were united by military, political, trade, economic and humanitarian ties. The Joint Commission at the level of the heads of governments of Russia and Uzbekistan is operating, and the Intergovernmental Commission on Economic Cooperation is an important instrument for cooperation. We also cooperate within the CIS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the UN, BRICS, and the Eurasian Economic Union, where Tashkent is an observer, and a roundtable discussion was held in Tashkent on the 14th of November this year, with the participation of Russian Ambassador Alexei Yerkov, the director of the Center of Foreign Political Investigations, Foreign Political Research and the International Initiatives of Uzbekistan Foreign Ministry Sanjar Valiyev, think tanks and branches of Russian universities, and it was about development of our ties in different formats and cooperation in different areas, and the highest level contacts that will come in the future. One more important event that took place on the 19th of November in Republika Srpska, RT Doc Film Festival, the Time of Our Heroes. I would remind you the first one was held in May. Russian Ambassador Igor Kolabukhov, Speaker of National Assembly of the Republic of Srpska, Nenad Stevanovic participated, as well as representatives of municipal authorities, science, culture figures, young people. There were video addresses by Minister of Culture Olga Lyubimova, Head of RT Corporation Margarita Simonyan, Head of Rossотрудничества Evgeny Primakov, and representatives of the Russian Foreign Ministry also addressed the participants. The films demonstrated war Russians and Serbs, Blood and Faith by Olga Kiri. The film reflecting our joint aspects of our friendship, Russian and Serbian friendship, as well as the film Fortress of Faith, about human courage and about mutual help by people in military times. There was an enthusiastic response by the public. They are now united by compassion indifference towards the Donbass protectors. The stories demonstrated just testify of common ideals and the strong ties that unite the Russian Federation and the Republic of Srpska. I would like to mention one more premiere that is to come today. Today is the day, the 27th of November 2025, in Moscow. The Studio 12 of Nikita Mikhalkov will host the ceremony of the Open Eurasian Film Award Diamond Butterfly, the key event of the Eurasian Academy of Cinematographic Arts. The Diamond Butterfly we have mentioned in details on the sidelines of the Vladivostok Forum, and now it has come, and now it will visit many talented people. This prize has been, this award has been initiated by the Russian Ministry of Culture and the Russian Cultural Fund. The initiator is Nikita Mikhalkov. The Diamond Butterfly facilitates the preservation of cultural memory of people and fostering the spiritual development of viewers. It's for cinema figures, cinema personalities from all countries. Today there will be surprises as promised by the organizers. This prize is open for representatives of all countries who share our common moral values. Requests for participation have been made by 17 countries: Belarus, Venezuela, Vietnam, Indonesia, Iran, Kyrgyzstan, China, Cuba, Pakistan, Russia, Senegal, Serbia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Turkey, Uzbekistan and South Africa. They have presented 34 films. There will be special awards, and there will be 12 categories, including a prize for contribution to world cinema. The main aim of the art of cinema is not just commercial success, it's just a possibility, opportunity to preserve the cultural heritage and to reveal universal meanings. One more topic, the Patrice Lumumba People's Friendship University of Russia new education center has been opened. It will allow, it has been opened in Bangui. It will allow to increase the sphere of knowledge of Russian culture and Russian language, and to contribute to the development of friendship and cooperation between the two countries, Russia and the Central African Republic. Now I would mention that the Russian Military Historical Society has conducted an event on preserving the historic memory in the Lutheran Cemetery in St. Petersburg. The tomb of the renowned Russian diplomat Andrei Badberg has been restored. It was done within the framework of the organization, Remember Everyone by Name. And then there was the ceremony of the exhibition of General Diplomat Minister, exhibition dedicated to Andrei Badberg, who participated in the Russo-Turkish War in 1768-1764, was awarded in the Battle of Kagul in 1770, awarded the Order of St. George of the Fourth Class in 1770, and as an envoy of Russia in Sweden, he participated in clarifying the borders between the two states and facilitated the Gatchina Allied Treaty on military aid. His diplomatic talent was valued by Empress Catherine the Great in 1806-1808. He was the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Empire Empire. He contributed to the forming of anti-Napoleonic coalition and was present during the signing of the peace treaty of Tilsit in 1807. During the events in St. Petersburg, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia was represented by the head of the Department for Liaisons with the constituent entities of the Russian Federation, Igor Kapirin. The work to preserve the historical memory is being carried out further, and soon we will create the relevant section. Now, regarding the Mauritania Independence Day, our relations are of friendly and constructive nature. They are steadily developing. Our countries share a commitment to fundamental principles and norms of international law, political and diplomatic methods for resolving conflicts, with the UN playing a central role. The multi-level political dialogue is preserved. In October 2024, the President of Mauritania visited Moscow, visited Russia, and in Kazan he had a meeting with Vladimir Putin. And in February 2023, the Islamic Republic of Mauritania was visited by Minister Lavrov. Efforts are taken in order to strengthen our cooperation. Its first, most important area is fishing. Humanitarian cultural ties are also developed, and the quota for grants by Mauritanian citizens has been increased by the Russian government to 50 places. In Sochi, in November 2024, a memorandum, interministerial memorandum, has been signed in culture. I would like to congratulate our Mauritanian friends on their independence and wish them peace, well-being, and prosperity. Now the anniversary of the Lao People's Democratic Republic, the 50th anniversary of the proclamation of independence. They have gained independence from French colonial rule. It was just brutal aggression in Indochina. The patriotic forces have won in 1975 and proclaimed the Lao People's Democratic Republic. The diplomatic relations between Russia and Laos were established on the 7th of October 1960. The Soviet Union provided unwavering support to the Lao National Liberation Movement, and our country contributed to the development of the young state, strengthening its economic capacity, and major industrial sites have been constructed in Laos with the help of Soviet specialists, and educational institutions also are developing, and the cooperation between Russia and Laos is multidimensional. On the 9th of March 1994, the Treaty on the Foundation of Friendly Relations was signed, and on the 13th of October 2011, the Declaration on Strategic Partnership in the Asia-Pacific region. And there was a meeting between President Putin and the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party during his official visit in July, his official visit to our country, and a meeting with the Lao Prime Minister during his attendance of the 10th Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok in September. So those meetings were held in meetings on foreign issues between the ministries of foreign affairs of Russia and Laos were held 2 times in June and July. Now our specialists are assisting in demining Laos from unexploded mines. We have detailed on that during the briefing on the 20th of November. We'll post a link in the text of today's briefing. And on the 2nd of December in Vientiane, a number of events are to be held, and the Russian delegation will be headed by Deputy Chair of the Federation Council, Nikolai Zhuravlyov. We wish our Lao friends all the best, and we will continue our commitment to ensuring stability and security in Asia-Pacific region. One more announcement: on the 3rd and the 4th of December, a large-scale forum will be held in Moscow, Counter-Terrorism Conference, National and Regional Counter-Terrorism Strategies amid emerging security challenges and threats. It is held based on the initiative adopted during the presidency of our country in BRICS, and it is aimed at increasing the counter-terrorism security. The forum will unite more than 100 delegates from countries that are participants and partners in BRICS, and the forum will be attended by high-ranking colleagues from the UN Counter-Terrorism, the SCO Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, the CIS Anti-Terrorism Center, and the CSTO Secretariat. The discussions will be attended by a monitoring group of the UNSC 1267, 1989, 2253 sanctions committees on ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and in 1988 on the Taliban movement.
The conference will serve as a unique platform to have a trusted and depoliticized discussion of a broad scope of relevant issues of counter-terrorist agenda. Particularly, there will be special focus to the aspects of forming progressive theoretical and methodological approaches to counter-terrorism, the increase of efficiency of joint work to prevent financial and economic nourishing of terrorist activity. The participants will exchange their estimates and evaluations of existing terrorist and extremist threats in the regional global tracks, and will share best practices in the area of fighting the spread of destructive ideology, including internet. The central element of the forum will be the roundtable dedicated to the experience of international organizations in elaborating collective principles and regional strategies in counterterrorism. The participants will focus on different initiatives and projects directed to improve cooperation to neutralize modern challenging threats. We view the upcoming conference to be Russia's contribution to the carrying out of anti-terrorist strategy of BRICS in 2020 and the plan of its implementation 2021 and positional document of the BRICS Working Group on Counterterrorism 2024. We're convinced that the event will give additional impulse to the multifaceted dialogue in fighting terrorism in the format of BRICS Plus, and also underline the key role that the countries are playing with their partners and colleagues in the global efforts to maintain international peace and security. And I am ready to answer your questions. Is International Affairs Journal with us today? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Greetings. Recently, Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, said that the conflict in Ukraine is possible to end it until the end of 2025. At the same time, Mr. Rutte said that the peace plan doesn't evaluate Russia as a long-term threat to Europe. How would you comment on this statement? You know, I just wanted to ask a qualifying question to them. Are they standing for peace or for war? The fact, the statement that Russia will remain a threat to NATO after the Ukrainian conflict was mentioned and made many times, repeatedly by the NATO leadership. This has been enshrined in doctrine documents of the alliance, where they have written that Russia will remain a long-term security threat in all operational senses, It's comical, it sounds comical, but it is what it is. They've proclaimed this as their goal. Why are they doing this? It's clear. They're doing this so that they will not be able, so that they avoid justifying broad militarization and the increase of military expenses. The fictional Russian threats will be ramped up, blown out of proportion more and more. The Europeans are already reminded of the imminent attack of Russia every time. They are now saying that it's completely imminent. They are saying that Russia will not stop in Ukraine, will attack the country members of NATO. I just wanted to remind everyone how this was developing. Russia for 7 years called on the carrying out of Minsk agreements, and instead of Minsk agreements, we saw the huge increases in strikes against the peaceful population in Donbass, and responding to that, Russia made written propositions and relayed them through OSCE to try to follow the peaceful path, but we were forced to react after not receiving any reaction. Immediately getting a reaction, immediately getting a response as if we've been engaged in, it is us that was engaged in aggression. In addition to that, so that they could anchor their opinion in something, we saw the fact that instead of normal dialogue and the implementation of what has been agreed upon, we received only mass shellings of Russian-speaking population amounting to nothing short of extermination. That was the thing for 7 years until it ended in 2022. This has all been recorded. We all clearly remember how it all started. And now we hear the same song. We are tired of repeating the same thing, that we have no such intentions of attacking Europe. We will not allow ourselves to be bullied. We will not we've been patient for 7 years, and at least online, through the internet, we tried to reach them, reach the central discussion platforms or central UN platforms, and even then we were rejected. But there were no aggressive tendencies that they are trying to portray us having. However, NATO expansion is still a threat to us, and they are shying away from mentioning that in greater detail. NATO's desire to engulf Ukraine is also a threat to us. The member of this country, an aggressive military alliance, which the entire essence of which is to counter our country, is unacceptable to us. Once again, the essence of NATO is to counter our countries, to counter, not counter the so-called aggression of Russia, but just an overt opposition to our country in all areas, all in the vein of the policy, the declared policy of strategic defeat of Russia. The fact that Mark Rutte is optimistic about the possibility of ending the conflict in Ukraine in the nearest future doesn't mean anything in rough sense of the word, because we've accustomed to the fact that he has been saying completely diametrically opposite things depending on the situation. we don't see any changes in their overall attitude, including in the taking into account that NATO are trying to torpedo the negotiating process on the settlement of Ukrainian conflict. I think that the amount of leaks and the amount of public rhetoric speaks for itself, and all attempts to have a diplomatic and political settlement or contacts cause an immediate hysteria in the information space in Europe, and some convulsions that serve to hamper the progress, to demolish even the most humble tendencies towards peace. Thank you. Thank you. Is RIA Novosti next? Yes, yes, good afternoon. Christine Rodriguez, RIA Novosti. We have two questions today. My first question is that during the recent statement in the Japanese Parliament, the Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi refused to confirm Tokyo's commitment to the three non-nuclear principles, which was taken as a possibility of their re-evaluation, and also resulted in a strong reaction on the part of the PRC. How would you comment on the situation? We'll hear some interesting statements from Japan almost every day, and in conditions where the government of Japan is intent on remilitarizing, and even the very idea of the review question of the evaluation of the non-nuclear commitments of Tokyo provokes a growth of tension in the Asia-Pacific region. There is no doubt that the practical steps in that avenue, if they will be taken, will result in inevitable consequences for the global scale in the area of international security. It was weird to see from Tokyo some provocative statements. It was weird to hear a head of state that used to support the non-proliferation regime in the past and called on the world community to have complete nuclear disarmament. I know that priorities change, but I just wanted to know if they have completely parted with the previous agenda they've had for decades. It's obvious that it talks about the potential re-evaluation of the three non-nuclear principles completely completely cross with this line and undermine the positions of Japan in the platform of the non-proliferation treaty. We see how the residents of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were worried about this rhetoric because they remember that nuclear bombs were falling from sky, but they also remember that people were launching them, that the airplanes were sent from the territory of the United States of America. They remember the consequences of this terrible, horrible tragedy in the history of humanity that shouldn't be repeated. They are yearly honoring the victims of the United States nuclear bombardment. They are trying to say that this is all in the past, and are softly moving the question towards blaming Russia for that. But the residents in the cities remember how it really happened. Traditionally, as you know, that the Japanese Prime Minister is invited to those ceremonies. I just wanted to ask once again, what will their course of action will be now when they hear such rhetoric? Will they still invite the Prime Minister or not? I just wanted to remind everyone that such ceremonies in the past were painted in the following rhetoric, painted in such a way that the official Tokyo blamed Russia for those terrible events, despite the historical truth being that our country was doing everything in its power to avoid the tragedy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and actually popularize this topic in such a way that that the world community condemns it, and so that the world will not repeat the same mistakes. And every Soviet child knew about the history of a little girl in Japan who who made thousands of origami birds to try to cure themselves from radiation sickness. There have been many movies dedicated to that, many books. It's not a tragedy that has been caused by us, but it's a tragedy that we emphasized with greatly. And in the recent years, during these commemorative events in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, through some twisted way, I don't know how, perhaps using fakes, they tried to link once again Russia to this and tried to condemn us and convict and accuse us of some crimes that we didn't commit. And it's weird to see this transformation. On our side, we call on the Japanese leadership to rethink their approach while they still have the opportunity and to return to the positions enshrined in the constitution of the country. Thank you. My second question is that on December 4th and 5th in Vienna, there will be a yearly meeting of the Ministers' Council of the OEC countries. Does Mr. Lavrov plan to take part in this event? No. The Russian participation will be ensured by the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Grushko. We will share detailed materials, positional documents, of course, in the working order, in the working information order, and of course we will publish it at the website of our Foreign Ministry. All the relevant information could be found there. Thank you very much. I have a third question, if the colleagues don't mind, a very short one, if I can ask it. Of course, I don't mind. Thank you. I just wanted to ask you to comment on... Christine, you have a golden ticket to ask as many questions as you'd like during the time frame. Any journalist participating in our briefing has this opportunity, and everyone knows that. Thank you. I just wanted to ask you to comment on the publication of Donald Trump supporting one of the candidates for the presidency of Honduras. How would you comment on that? I saw those messages that in one of the social networks, in the social network belonging to him, the presidential candidate of Honduras was supported by Donald Trump. The elections will be taking place on November 30th. Mr. Trump directly stated that any other candidates would be unacceptable for the United States. This interference into electoral campaigns in Latin America are becoming a commonplace, a routine, in fact. So a leader of a foreign state feels himself in power to instruct the population how to vote on this and that candidate. This is a direct example of interference into internal affairs. This is worrying due to the fact that there is an American armada currently hosted in the Caribbean basin, which is open gesture of pressure against all unconquered, unsubmitted countries of the region. We hope that the people of Honduras, in accordance with national legislation and the national dignity, will make their true and diplomatized choice regardless of external pressure. Thank you. Is Sinhua with us? Good afternoon, correspondent of Sinhua. My question concerns Japan. So the Minister of Defense of Japan declared the plans to deploy medium-range missiles on the islands near the Chinese region of Taiwan. In recent years, Japan significantly reviewed its policy of security. Year after year increases the defense budget and wants to develop offensive arms. These actions of Japan violate positive declaration, the principle of exclusively defensive policy and peaceful constitution of Japan, and also increase tensions in the region. How would you comment on that? Thank you. Once again, I would like to say that we are just trying to get ahead of all the news that are coming from Japan. There have been numerous of them. There have been a lot of questions asked towards Russia regarding this rhetoric that is not directly addressed to our country. This is an Asia-Pacific region, but many foreign correspondents it's a great interest. It has a great interest among the foreign correspondents, but not Japanese correspondents. This begs the question: what are the Japanese correspondents doing? They must do something, but they're clearly not doing anything linked to that situation. We are carefully monitoring all statements and steps of the Japanese leadership in the framework of their course to remilitarize the country. Earlier, we've repeatedly taken note of the negative influence of this policy of Tokyo against stability and security in the regional diplomatic channel, through diplomatic channels, including through diplomatic channels. We sent numerous notes of the ministry, where we warned Japan of the admissibility of using its territory to host and deploy the medium-range missiles of American make. Regarding the island you mentioned, namely Okinawa, according to observation, Japan is dictated by Washington to turn those lands into a deployment ground, staging ground, pumping it with weapons, which could be not only of defensive but also of offensive character. Such measures aggravate the situation area of regional security and fraught with serious risk for neighboring states. I emphasize with the people of this archipelago that are bearing the brunt of these military preparations, their autochthonous culture, that Russian scientists were enjoying studying, and a peaceful outlook are of no difference to the Japanese leadership. Perhaps they forgot that why 8 years ago there were clashes in those islands during the war. Tokyo should return to the words, should return to the basis of the constitution, because those islands were the field of battle 8 years ago due to the aggressive policy of Tokyo. They need to return to the foundations of the post-war peaceful development of Japan. And the outcomes that fed these foundations, unfortunately, are not being completely recognized by the Japanese side fully.
So, to whom the current Japanese authorities harm, it is just obvious. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Is China Media Corporation with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. Our question was similar as for Shinwa colleagues, so we have no more questions. Thank you. Thank you. Is Reuters with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. We are here. And our question is about contacts between Russia and the US connected with the peace plan, because recently there have been many leaks in the media on those documents. So we would like to ask, are there currently discussions via diplomatic channels between the US and Russia, discussions regarding Washington's peaceful initiatives on the settlement of the Ukrainian crisis? What proposals that have leaked into the media are acceptable for Russia and which of them are not? And regarding discussions at the level of delegations between the US and Russia, when are they possible? So let us begin with the first part of the question. The part about the events, the meetings, because as soon as they're prepared, they will be declared. I do not want to pronounce any fantasies, to invent something. Now, regarding those leaks, some of them fake, it's a negative perspective of the questions, the issues, the approaches to the problems that require serious discussion and targeted work. We understand that what is happening at media outlet, what is called leaks, links to unnamed sources, is to undermine the planned political diplomatic contacts, the events, the discussions, and so on and so forth. But the most interesting thing is there has been a proof of that. At first we have made comments. It used to be just our expert opinion, conclusion, and then all that has come out. Just, I don't want, it's just this choir from NATO, from the EU. This procession has entered the stage, and they have started to cry out that nothing is satisfactory for them from those political diplomatic efforts. They just require attention to them, but it just leads to nothing good. It's obvious. It's just not about the violation of some ethics of negotiations process, but intended steps in order to form through the information field of the idea that would be profitable for those who can be qualified as the war party. I just don't want to make any additional comments, to add some elements. If we have information we would like to share with you, we will do that as soon as possible, but there have been many comments by aide to the President of the Russian Federation and the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. He mentioned this issue during his press conference, and if we have some data, we will come back to you. Thank you. Is News.ru with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. News.ru is with you. We have two questions today. The first one, I would like to know what is the assessment by the Russian Foreign Ministry of attempts by the Europeans to interfere in the discussion of Donald Trump's peaceful plan on Ukraine. So we have already mentioned that the aim is to disrupt the planned political, diplomatic approaches, processes. They have not abandoned the sick idea of imposing a strategic defeat on Russia, using Ukraine as an instrument of this detrimental policy. Why is that like that? Because they are connected with those ultra-liberal circles, and they have those revanchist ideas and globally and at the American continent. They're just developing that issue. They do not aim at peace. Peace means nothing to them. They would have implemented the Minsk agreement if they had been interested in a peaceful settlement. They would have done their best to support the Russian-Ukrainian negotiations in 2022 and not to disrupt them. And this year, they would have applauded and would have facilitated negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, but no, they have not done that. They were doing the contrary. And now they are the war party. They supply a colossal number of weapons, lethal and unlethal aid political support of many kinds to the Kiev regime, despite its being smeared in extremism and corruption, and nothing stops them. For example, the crimes against civil population, crimes against children, in the past, they would have meant the end of any contacts, and the corruption schemes that have been unveiled, they would just revoke diplomats, they would ban any shipments, and support UN resolutions, relevant UN resolutions, but just nothing stops them. They have their objective, anti-Russian objective, and with the instrument supporting this Kiev regime. That is clear. Regarding the Ukrainian issue, the president of Turkey, Erdogan, has proposed to use the Turkish platform for negotiations on Ukraine. How relevant is the Istanbul format for Russia is now? You know, for us, any format that would involve the discussion of humanitarian aspects or political settlement, it is relevant for us. We always value the initiatives that were proposed by the countries, have been proposed for negotiations process, platforms, and mechanism, development of mechanism, models, opinions, how that could be done. And despite our relationship to the Bankova government that we do not hide, we have always supported those contacts for humanitarian purposes, for the respect of people, for our desire for peace. But you just see that all our proposals of the latest round, they were just suspended because they have done the reverse, or in some cases have done nothing. And maybe they have already stolen the money they have allocated for conducting any negotiations for any contacts in Turkey. It might be the case, but actually we are obliged to the countries and to the Turkish side in particular. We have supported this format, and it was the Kiev regime that since June has postponed, has paused negotiations, has not replied to our proposals on political and humanitarian issues, and within the working group they have not answered, they have not replied anything. There has been no agreement and so on. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is 1 second. Anna Dalu with us. Yes, Madam Zakharova, hello. We have 2 questions today. The first one, could you please comment on the reports by the media that Russia and Ukraine have already started peaceful negotiations with the mediation of the US at the neutral platform in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. Yes, I would repeat that this issue has already been commented upon in the presidential administration, commented by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov during his press conference on the 25th of November. If I have something to add, I will share this information with you. Thank you. And the second question, Donald Trump has repeatedly repeatedly stated his desire to end the Ukrainian conflict peacefully. Is Russia ready to support Washington's peaceful plan? So I saw that you were smiling when you were asking the question, because Sergei Lavrov also commented on this issue, and we will post a link in the text in order to reply to this question. Thank you. Thank you. Is Doni News Pakistan with us?
Thank you for taking my question. I have two questions today. My first question is, Russia abstained from voting on the US resolution 2803 on Gaza. The plan does not include the Palestinian Authority and bypasses the UN Security Council. How does Russia view the protection of Palestinian rights and self-determination in this situation?
Мы эту тему подробным образом комментировали в сообщении, в пресс-релизе от 18 ноября. Я могу повторить еще раз, что 17 ноября в Совете Безопасности ООН с планом Трампа прекращения войны в Газе. Документ был принят 13 странами Китай воздержались. В основе подготовленного Вашингтоном документа
there were 13 votes in favor, with Russia and China abstaining. It was concerning the Gaza plan, the plan to govern Gaza, chaired by Donald Trump, and to deploy international stabilization forces together with Israel and Egypt, tasked, among other things, with peacekeeping functions, some peacekeeping functions, demilitarize the enclave and disarm Hamas and other armed groups. However, Palestinian National Authority's participation in governing the Gaza Strip, or more generally in determining the future of the Palestinians based on the two-state solution, is not envisaged. And the UN Security Council and the UN Secretariat have been completely sidelined. With the modalities of the deployment of international forces and Resolution 2803 does not grant the Security Council the necessary prerogatives to maintain peace and security. It contradicts the spirit of genuine peacekeeping and the universally recognized international legal framework that envisages the creation of independent and territorially contiguous state of Palestine within the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital, coexisting in peace and security with Israel. So Russia abstained from the vote, taking into account the position of the leadership of the Palestinian National Authority and interested Arab and Muslim countries in support of the American resolution, as well as to avoid a relapse into violence and military action in Gaza. I would like to remind you that the war and the suffering of the civilian population in the enclave could have been stopped long ago if Washington had not methodically 6 times over the past 2 years vetoed draft resolutions demanding an intermediate ceasefire. We hope that this decision does not become a cover for uncontrolled experiments in the occupied Palestinian territory or become a final verdict on the legitimate rights of Palestinians to self-determination or an Israeli aspirations for
global level emphasized respect for Islam and Muslims, and his devotion to the Holy Quran is highly regarded in Pakistan. The Pakistani people see him as a courageous, principled, and globally respected leader. Can you tell me if President Putin intends to pay an official visit to Pakistan in the future? Are there any diplomatic consultation or preparation being made in this regard?
Ну, во-первых, я хотела бы начать с благодарности за ваши теплые слова в адрес нашей страны и нашего руководства.
At first, I would like to express my gratitude to your country for those words and for the authorities of your country. And I would like to remind that Russia is a multi-confessional state a country with a diverse culture, where people from different confessions reside. As you are aware, there are regions in Russia where traditionally residents just are Islamic, and we have many mosques in our country. Islamic representatives participate in the discussion of urgent questions globally and at the national level. They provide their very important input into the unity of our country. For us, it's not just a part of foreign policy, but a part of rich culture, ethnography, and part of our civilization. If you mention the president's schedule, traditionally it's commented upon by presidential administration. I would like to remind you that the head of our state has been invited to visit Islamabad, as well as several other countries. As it is customary in such cases, the media will be promptly informed of any decisions on this matter by the President of the Russian Federation. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is Bold News with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. Our question is about Marco Rubio denying to hold meetings with the head of the European diplomacy, Kaja Kallas. Can we say that Baltic states have become a dangerous adventure for the White House? You know, traditionally, Russian Foreign Ministry does not comment on contacts between the third countries if there is no direct connotation with our state, but I understand him personally. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Is Newsfront with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova.
One question, if you allow me. On 19th of November, the European Commission presented a package of proposals on the increase of military mobility. How would you comment on this package? This is another unhealthy initiative by the European Commission regarding the speediest creation of a zone of military mobility by 2027. This is yet another testament to Brussels' course to force march to reinforcement of the logistical potential of member countries of the EU to counter the fictional threat, made-up threat of Russia and its allies. Under the pretext of deterrence against a country and or inflicting the strategic defeat, the NATO countries are using the peaceful European Union to basically prepare a staging ground to redeploy large military contingents and heavy weapons of the North Atlantic Alliance to the Russian borders. This all happens after they have actually unleashed the conflict in Ukraine through numerous manipulations and manipulations in the internal affairs of the state and the use of anti-state and unconstitutional coup d'etats. And after that, they decided to blame something for that, and we saw this repeatedly in history. This will not result in any success because we see their true intent and see what they have written in the documents. We see that they are redeploying large. They are preparing a staging ground to redeploy heavy weapons and large armed contingents of NATO towards Russian borders. We're not talking about Russia extending its staging grounds against NATO, but NATO incessantly trying to use this or that technique to create hotspots of tension at our borders. The so-called military Schengen is in essence an integrated part of the initially unimplemented, unrealistic attempts to inflict a so-called strategic defeat upon our country pushed by the current EU leadership. It's telling that the Euro Commission decision to create this infrastructure for the fast transfer of military cargo through the EU countries to the eastern flank was preceded by the introduction of some limitations regarding the issuance of multi-entry Schengen visas to the citizens of the Russian Federation. Now we also additionally find out that they issue those visas to militants recruited in Asia. We see what is happening. The main human rights principle of freedom of movement of citizens in the EU was set aside for the freedom of movement of arms and military equipment. We are attentively looking at such military preparations in the environs of our country, taking into account their military planning. Thank you. Is Rudolf with us? Is Rudolf TV channel with us? Yes, good afternoon.
So sorry for being late. Thanks a lot for your opportunity. I have three questions. My first question is that according to some sources from Syria, there are a number of Russian people in Hol and Rosh camps under the control of Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria. Could you please tell us approximately how many of them are in those two camps? Also, how many Russians have you returned from there, and do you have any plan to return the other ones?
You know, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation doesn't have clear data on the number of Russians in the IDP camps in the northeast of Syria under the control of the self-proclaimed Kurdish administration. The official Syrian authorities that the Russian embassy in Syria interacts with has no access into this territory. And for this cause, any attempts to identify and check the Russian citizens' state among the IDPs is not possible at the moment. In the framework of the implementation of the orders of the President and the government of the Russian Federation through the Ombudsman of the President of the Russian Federation on the rights of the child, Maria Lvova-Belova, from December 2018 to November 2024, 464 children were returned from aforementioned camps into Russia. Due to the events of December 2024 and the aggravation of the military political situation and the change of ruling authorities in Syria, any humanitarian operations to repatriate adolescents have been temporarily suspended.
Thanks a lot. And second question is that, have you had any discussions with the Iranian authorities to provide them with military needs if they faced another attack from US or their allies?
You know, responding to your question, I can only say that the exact practical topics discussed in the framework of the Russian-Iranian dialogue are determined by the provisions of the Treaty on the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership between our countries. It presupposes, inter alia, the development of military and military-technical cooperation on a broad spectrum of questions.
And the last question is that there are reports in Iraq, and their families have told us as well, their sons have went to Ukraine or Russia to be participating in the war for some benefits, financial benefits. Do you confirm that there are Iraqi nationalities among Russian forces fighting against Ukrainian fronts?
All questions related to the technical, organizational, and other specific aspects of the special military operation are managed by the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, and it's not in our competence. We will readdress your question to our colleagues, and we will inform you on their response.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Thank you.
The same to you. Thank you. Is author E with us? Yes, good afternoon, author E. Greetings from Pskov at the conference It's Time to Live in Russia with the support of the governor of the region who has expressed his gratitude to you. From all the people that respond to our moral values could be encouraged to come to Russia. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you. We have two questions today. How does Russia see the readiness of the separate EU countries to review the sanctions and multi-political course, especially against the backdrop of the catastrophic deindustrialization, energy problems, and the complete fatigue of their people from this confrontation? Well, I responded to similar questions today, and in the introductory part I dwelt into detail on the state of the economy in the EU in select states, and I said that despite instead of resolving economic issues, they are engaged in militarization, stating that this move could lead them out of the dark forest into the bright future. We already gave our revelations of that, and as I already said, we will share, of course, more concrete information in the text of today's briefing. What normalcy can we talk about in regards to them? They are trying to disguise the current problems that they have and are militarizing at an extreme pace. They are providing immense amounts of money to the Kiev regime, sending weapons, sending arms. We see the same arms being spread all over the world. Can we talk about any possible return to normalcy, any return to trade negotiations, or any table of negotiation or deals? No, of course not. This is a continuation that we see, continuation of a destructive tendency, destructive processes. The leading economies of the EU, including Germany, the former locomotive of the movements they had, Berlin used to keep this status. Germany currently experiences negative tendencies in their economies. The growth of the EU is also aggravated by the United States tariff, the consequences of anti-Russian sanctions, the disastrous migration policy. The growth of internal problems in the EU leads to the growth of the corresponding growth of protest aspirations and the growth of oppositional, nationally oriented parties. And the EU establishment is, in response, ramping up the idea of Russian threats. They are manipulating the fears of the population to distract them from the real problems that they face. They are trying to silence their internal policy opponents, try to suppress any conflicting worldviews. And without any external threat on the Ukrainian factors, the leaders of the EU countries will be forced to face the reality, and that they will have to justify their exorbitant military expenses. They will face the necessity to respond before the population for the sanctions policy and anti-Russian policy which has proven its inefficacy, and that they've spent such an exorbitant amount of money towards Ukrainian conflict, which have been completely wasted. All those funds, for those all opportunities waited, they will have to respond for that, to be accountable for that. Some of the European leaders who have invested all their political capital in supporting the Kiev regime are justifiably afraid of losing their positions and the twilight of their career. In these conditions, we can hardly expect any real corrections of policy in the Russian track from the leadership of the EU. We don't see the facts at hand. Thank you. My second question. Does the Russian MFA support the actions of the International Network House of BRICS? We know that they are actively developing. Would like to ask your opinion. We have no information about our clear participation, but I will clarify this. Thank you. Is Broader Asia with us? Yes, sir. Greetings, greetings, colleagues. Ina Fernandez, Broader Asia channel. I have a short question. On November 25th in Kyrgyzstan, a Russian Kyrgyz TV channel Noma TV started its broadcast. Madam Zakharova, what is the relevance of the launch of this media channel and what role it will play in the information space in of our countries? Thank you. This was a result of decisions of watchers. There was a TV channel previously in Kyrgyzstan which at some point stopped its broadcast. Then there were new plans and initiatives that was implemented on their organization of broadcast on a new technological level with the interesting organization of information process and the inclusion of Russian TV programs into the broadcast and with the Bishkek-based news blog and with a very professional collective and opportunity to broadcast in both Russian and Kyrgyz languages. A completely renewed, revitalized, highly technological and interesting information model. It's a joint model. It's not just something introduced from abroad. We saw active participation from Kyrgyz nationals in the work of this TV channel. And I would like to add, perhaps you've heard that the representatives of this country who were responding to questions at the inauguration ceremony said that Kyrgyzstan used to lack such an information resource, which is a very interesting collaboration, and here it is, it appeared. So it's a combination of demand, supply, legitimate interest, and prospects. I had the honor to take part in the ceremony of the launch of this TV channel. Russia is closely linked to the Kyrgyz Republic, not only by common history, but with common interests, by the interests of common people. And this TV channel will open a new page to develop humanitarian partnership and context between citizens. And the main goal of its creation is to return Russian programs from the NTV channel to the Kyrgyz TV broadcast space, but also to supplement the broadcast with local news and analytical programs, documentaries shedding light on the historical and cultural links between Russia and Kyrgyzstan. The signal will be freely shared through the second multiplex of the digital broadcast, spanning around 75% of the territory of the Kyrgyzstan, also through the larger cable network. Also said that it would be a good initiative to supplement this by internet support of this TV channel, as is customary now with all large media holdings. So it's obvious here that the channel will help creating benevolent media backdrop against Russian Federation, Kyrgyz Republic, and also further development of good neighborly relations between our countries. Thank you. Thank you. Is Embassy Live with us today? Greetings, Madam Zakharova. Greetings, colleagues. I have two questions. The Western countries are frequently accusing Russia of using NGOs and non-profit organizations as an instrument of hybrid influence However, it is them that are actively financing such structures throughout the world. In which you see the principal difference between the approaches of Moscow and Washington or Brussels to the popular diplomacy through NGO. They are financing the NGOs, making them the instrument of promoting their political or destructive even interests in other countries. But the West has always been a pioneer in that regard, because that's their invention, that it is them who managed, in the worst sense of the world, to reunite the capabilities of the public and the interests of the popular organizations that wanted to be useful in defending significant questions of environment, human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, helping international development, reuniting all those efforts with the complete, destructive, close-minded, dirtiest goals. And this is a conspiracy by the deep state authorities. This all came from the West. And that's the difference between us. That's their invention initially. There's a difference in making goals. The West uses NGOs as one of the instruments of their foreign policy to preserve their dominance in the world, in international relations, in the world arena. And Russia desires mutually beneficial international cooperation, promotion of common interests, and the views non-profit organization, NGO of Russia and other countries as means of popular diplomacy, unofficial assistance in the development and promotion of bilateral relations, concerned citizens that are reuniting to resolve important issues, to searching for senses. You know, with the development of society, such organizations have garnered significant potential and capabilities. However, our geopolitical adversaries are using this advance for their own nefarious purposes of a single track. One of the examples is that the collective West are using loyal members of the NGOs while planning and executing color revolutions. We all remember the results of these anti-constitutional coup d'etats. Also give another example of the environment. Instead of resolving real issues, the environmental organizations are being used as a means of political and economic pressure to hamper some projects, to gain preferential treatments, and exert financial pressure upon some side not to allow for some competitive projects. We've seen a lot of examples. So we saw the facts of financing of corresponding structures by Western governments and affiliated foundations with the budgets comparable to national reserves of some sovereign countries.
Actually, the mentioned political figures and the organizations, they have the role to convey the ideas of Washington and Brussels and their relationship towards the establishment and the different intelligence communities of the Western countries is unacceptable for us, and it's unacceptable as an instrument by other countries, and we will not accept such a model in our country, because our diplomacy, it organically adds to the public mechanisms of diplomacy in order to find common ground, to hold common events, in order to create some additional guarantees of peace and stability. It's not about imposing some doctrinal ideas, brainwashing, or recruiting people, nothing of the kind.
Мы целый день практически получаем, каждый день, целый день получаем запросы от
Nearly
неправительственных
for the
организаций,
entire day, every day,
с просьбой о
we get
поддержке,
requests from
помощи,
international
участии в проекте.
organizations, and
Помощь даже и не финансовая,
many of them approach us
информационной
for
или
support, for
консультационной.
assistance in a
Они хотят
participation in some
становиться
project,
частью вот такое мирового движения за сохранение
maybe
памяти о Второй
some
мировой войне. Они хотят
requests,
становиться волонтерами
they want to
Победы.
become part
Они
of
хотят
the global
принимать
movement
участие в таких
for the
акциях, как
preservation
«Бессмертный
of
полк»,
the Second World War
на
memory.
практике
They would like to
организации
participate in
шествий или
such
виртуально. Они имеют,
events
например,
such as
что
immortal
сказать по теме
regiments.
свободы слова.
They
У них
have
есть предложения по
something to
защите
say regarding the
традиционных
freedom of
ценностей.
speech. They have
И
some
вот в
proposals
этом
for the
смысле
protection
действительно
of
мы
traditional
работаем с ними.
values.
Какие-то проекты мы сами инициируем, какие-то
In that
мы
regard, we
совместно с ними
cooperate
проводим, а в
with them.
каких-то
Some
проектах мы
projects we
являемся исключительно
initiate.
исполнителями
In some projects we
их просьб,
collaborate,
даже не представляя, что
and
это за
somewhere we just
организации, но видя, что
implement
дело
their
благородное,
projects
помогая.
according to
И
their requests. Some
тоже, наверное, важный
organizations,
момент,
maybe some
российское правовое
offer
поле
us
не
some
предусматривает
good
политизацию общественной
deeds,
деятельности, гарантируя независимость НКО-сектора от какого бы то ни
and
было диктата.
in Russia we guarantee the independence of the public organizations of some dictatorship, of any dictatorship. Thank you. And my second question is about the Russian ambassador being summoned in Moldova allegedly because of the violation of the airspace of the Republic by Russian drones. How could you comment on that? I have already answered that question, but I can confirm that for the second week in a row, the Moldovan authorities are sharing their phobias on drone attacks allegedly of Russian origin. On the 20th of November, the ambassador of Russia in Moldova, Oleg Ozerov, was conveyed protests with regard to violation of airspace by drones. So there was no convincing proof of the Russian origin. It has not been detected, and Sandu regime is just participating in accusations without proof.
Были проведены консультации с румынской стороной и украинскими
those statements they were declared false, but after some consultations by Sandu, the opposite stance was taken. But just show us your proof, but nothing of the kind. It's actually empty accusations against Russia. And the second case of summoning our ambassador was some case with a drone that looked like actually a Russian Gerbera drone that allegedly landed on the roof of one of the houses in Floresht district. But many experts and commentators, they pointed out some inconsistencies in this case, because the roof would have been damaged or the roof would have broken if that would have been the case. But on the photos we can see an undamaged drone on an undamaged roof of the building, as if it has been taken from the front line and put on this roof. On the Moldavian territory, it's just looks like what the Kiev regime and its Western curators commonly do. So our targets are not situated on the territory of Moldova. The targets are solely the Ukrainian army sites. It's just also connected with the scandal with weapons smuggling. We have already mentioned that today it's the real problem, actual problem. They are transported in trucks all over Moldova, maybe, and then they are taken out, and those stories are invented. They just tried to somehow counter this anger by the people and the closure of Russian Center of Science and Culture in Chisinau. I do not know what the objective was. Maybe some demonstration of reintegration. If drones are found in Europe, Moldova should also keep up as it is moving towards Euro integration. They should pay attention actually to medicine, to education, science, the areas like that. But they make up some stories that are obviously false. Once again, we state that Russia respects the sovereignty of Moldova. We call upon the Moldovan authorities to abandon the policy of denigration of our country, to stop fooling its own people. The Moldovans know what I'm talking about. Thank you. If there are no more questions, have we forgotten about someone? Then goodbye to you. As I understand, we will meet again in winter only. All the best to you. Prosperity to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.